Good morning and welcome to today's news here on Vanguard Live. My name is Ololade Adeomi. I'll flip into all our newspapers for today, starting with Vanguard Media Line. On Vanguard says U.S. reps propose a visa ban on Kwankwaso, Miyetti Allah, others as U.S. lawmakers present bill on Christian religious persecution in Nigeria. Sikh terrorist designation for Fulani militias. We are shocked. Will respond at appropriate time, says Kwankwasia movement. Kwakwaso caught in web of international hypocrisy blackmail, says NNPP. Major story can be found on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Top banner it says Makoko demolitions, a fate of 1,000 school children hangs in the balance. Dangote refinery eats 650,000 BPD capacity. Kidnappers abduct police officer, four others in Edo. Capital importation eats $21 billion in 10 months, says Minister. Umahi vows to resign if Abuja Kaduna Kano Road project fails quality test. Insecurity, poverty worsening in North ACF raises alarm. Senate demands a full implementation of defense budget, warns against delays. Go Nigeria urges deeper democratic reform beyond elections. I could be arrested anytime, says El Rufai. And finally, on Vanguard newspaper, it says FG orders NAFDAC to hold sachet alcohol ban enforcement. Away from the Vanguard, a look into the Punch newspaper. Major line on the Punch says religious freedom violation. APC NNPP back Kwankwaso as US sanctions attention rises. Yes, Congress gets bill proposing visa ban, asset seizure for ex-Kano governor, others. Top banner says Kwara massacre, survivors traumatized after deadly attack, soldiers occupy deserted community. Blackouts, 300 billion naira power lifeline for hospitals. Universities eat snag. Coup plotters will face justice, says Air Chief. Senators clash as Umahi defense military spending. Daniel Amosun absent as Abiodun endorses Tinubu for 2027. 12 Nigerians nabbed in Ghana prostitution crackdown. Tinubu names a new NACON chairman as Ag disruptions fears mount. Cybercrime. Court jails two Chinese directors, 92 years. El Rufai anticipates arrest as police detain allies. Away from that, a look into the Nation newspaper. Major line on the Nation says alleged religious violation. Kwankwaso faces U.S. sanctions. Tobana says Bank of Industry records unprecedented lending to enterprises in 2025. Lower Banner says Dangote refinery attains full restoration, optimization of crude distillation unit CDU. Away from that, a look into the Guardian newspaper. Major headline on the Guardian says North decries 2027 politics despite insecurity, 4,654 deaths in 2025. Tobana says backlash trails a Senate version of new electoral act. Transport Ministry received 1% of 2025 allocation rules over 70%. U.S. lawmakers want a visa ban, asset freeze on Miyetti Allah, Kwankwaso. Oduwale declares $21 billion capital inflow in 10 months. Correctional Service earmarks 14.83 billion naira for inmates feeding. NAFDAC denies federal government suspension of sachet alcohol ban enforcement. How botched broadband plans ruin in transmission of election result. And finally, electricity workers threaten strike, allege anti-labor practices. That's all we have on the front pages of the newspaper this morning. Join us after the break for a quick analysis. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News here on Vanguard Live. My name is Ololade Adeomi. I look into all our major newspapers. We're going straight into the analysis with Mr. Oludare Mayowa. He's a publisher of Global Financial Digest. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I look into our first story for today. Our first story says U.S. lawmakers introduce sanctions, a bill targeting Nigerian figures. A group of U.S. Republican lawmakers in the House of Representatives has introduced the Nigeria Religious Freedom and Accountability Act of 2026, aimed at addressing alleged religious persecution and mass atrocities against Christians in Nigeria. The bill recommends targeted sanctions, including visa bans and asset freezes under the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act on individuals and organizations accused of serious religious freedom violation. Among those listed are Senator Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, former governor of Kano State and leader in the new Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria, and related Fulani associations and militaries. What are your thoughts, on this issue, and on what basis are the U.S. lawmakers proposing sanctions against individuals here in Nigeria?
When you look at the background, when President Trump actually showed interest in Nigeria, threatening the militia again, oppressing the Christian in Nigeria, we have equally heard the Prime Minister of Israel background to what the parliaments are doing in America, and I believe that they are telling you that the main business is to defend Christians in the country, despite the President Trump showed interest in the defending Christians in Nigeria. At the parliament, at the capital, for example, they have had public sitting to analyze what is going on in Nigeria and how to address the issue. I'm sure the legislation coming in is part of the measure being put together by the United States government to address the issue to Christians in some part of the country. So for me, but I think the capital, the lawmakers should go further by looking at especially, in some part of the northern country, another states of this country, which actually, if you go to Kano, for example, Kano government are destroying, people are selling alcohol, they are destroying their products. Those items they believe that violate their religion, they are destroying people in those areas. So Sharia law was introduced by Kwankwaso in Kano as well. But I expect that then they put all of them in an envelope. Samfara, Katsina, and all the other parts of the country that introduced Sharia is meant for alone. But when they expand the scope to cover every city that country, you are violating their right. So for me, I align with the thought of the lawmaker in the US. Coming from the last administration of late Muhammad Buhari, who seemed to have been a sympathizer to Fulani militias and all the Boko Haram and the rest, and slowed down in his, he was so sympathetic with them that we find that they are free for all battle. I support what the U.S. government is trying to do through legislation, through direct intervention, sending troops to Nigeria, training our troops, sharing intelligence to ensure that we put an end to it. It's becoming so scary. Especially when coming to Kwara, coming to Ondo, it's scary for people living down the south here. So I think deal with the situation.
Okay, so what specific evidence would you say that the U.S. lawmakers, need to have in order to justify naming someone like Kwankwaso personally in such a bill?
Look, if you look at what has been happening globally, US have a lot of intelligence web. So everybody is aware. The prior before the announcement of Trump's on Nigeria, there have been major movements, there have been major information, there have been people complaining about what is happening here. Well known to the intelligence ecosystem. So I'm sure the legislators are not just being frivolous, are not just being doing anything. They have intelligence that indicates some Nigerian. Don't forget to during the Buhari regime, who are told that they have a list of financier of terrorism in the country, which are kept under. All these information are available to the lawmakers in America and all over the world, even to our government here. So I won't be surprised if there are other personalities that are included in the list being drafted by the American lawmakers. So I would question on those personalities that be financing, supporting under the ground, and probably that's a way of actually exposing them.
Okay, so what the question that has been on everyone's lips is what legal and diplomatic implication would there be if this bill is actually passed into law, especially between US and Nigeria?
Yeah, why they cannot probably do something to them in Nigeria here. Some of them have their assets outside there. Some of them have their diluted money placed in American banks, in US banks, UK banks. Influence to freeze those assets, because it's from those assets they are funding. Some of those accused are funding terrorism in Nigeria, and when they freeze the source of their resources, you are trying to when the law is enacted and signed to law, the American has a lot of instruments in the financial system, for example, to freeze their assets. And some of them are property in America in so many places. Most of our leaders have a lot of resources kept out. Are going to the other country where if they can trace this asset to and freeze them to disempower them for further empowering the terrorists in the country. And that will probably give us a respite.
So the NNPP and Kwankwaso movement have described this act as political targeting. Would you say that is exactly what is happening?
But I would say that if the action is taken locally in Nigeria here, probably I say, okay, maybe the president influenced that in Nigeria. But this is outside influence. These are outside lawmakers who are looking at line. I won't align with NPP and the movement. I don't know. I don't have the details of what's going on. But I can tell you, if American legislators are doing this, they have access to information that most ordinary people don't have access to. So for people to in that place, because it's not Nigeria, it's not APC versus NPP, APC versus PDP. It is American government, American lawmaker versus those who they suspected are funding or are supporting.
Okay, we didn't get that though. We didn't get the last.
That's why the American government have access to information that will indict people they are accusing. So they have all sorts of information they can analyze and be able to pinpoint. And don't forget they have the list of people who are financing terrorism in this country are available. Potential to escalate the crisis in the country.
Okay, so let's look at the consequences that have been listed. There's going to be a visa ban and also asset freezes. Do you think this will realistically, change behavior on ground? especially, or deter people that want to also partake in financing terrorism and all of this? Do you think this is enough to, deter such behaviors?
Yes, I know it partially it will have impact on them. For example, if any of them have their assets, like assets in US banks, for example, and those assets are frozen, they are limited in the funding released to the terrorists. Secondly, too, if they're sending a signal to Nigeria and the local government, Nigerian government to do something because they will share Italian with them and financing terrorism in this country and prosecute them. So that could probably, curtail whatever activity they are doing here. So it's not going to be just the freezing of assets in the US or other parts of the world. These are frozen for them. They can deport their children, and that's a setback for them. So there are so many areas of mayor they can adopt to actually have strong this people to back out from funding the structure in our country. So I'm sure it's going to be effective if they carefully implement it and collaborate with the Nigerian government who will equally implement the other part of it locally. Like, for example, if their names appear and there's intelligent government could pressure Nigerian president, Nigerian federal government to actually prosecute those people. And once those people are put on trial, you can imagine what will happen to their other activities as support for the terrorists.
Okay, so let's quickly take a look into our second story. Our second story says Nigeria's federal government has directed the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, to immediately halt all enforcement actions related to the proposed ban on sachet alcohol and alcohol in 200 millimeters PET bottles. This means NAFDAC is no longer to seal factories, warehouses, or take other regulatory actions connected to the ban until further notice. The Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and the Office of the National Security Advisor explained that this decision is due to grave concerns about economic disruption and security risk that may arise from aggressive enforcement before a fully implemented national alcohol policy framework is in place. NAFDAC, on the other hand, is saying that this report has, denied the suspension claim, stating that enforcement of the ban still stands, highlighting a lack of clarity or possible institutional tension over the directive. So let's look at this. How does the federal government's directive to halt the sachet alcohol ban enforcement, what does this signify? NAFDAC, on the other hand, is saying that no, there's no suspension claim. The federal government, on the other hand, is saying that this has to be suspended.
Okay, I think we have to await clarity from both sides. For example, the president issued an order to NAFDAC. NAFDAC is bound to follow. There was no such directive. Then there's something missing in between. But let's look at it holistically. Banning sachets, alcohol, is a good measure. When you look at the easier for them, it's cheaper to buy and to get them addicted to such things. And apart from the environmental implication of the sachet, there are other dangers to human consumption of it. Since such but as low as they can afford to buy, it's like encouraging them to become alcoholics, in the sense of it. So banning it and ensuring that those who can afford it, the populace, is good, But okay, then if government is looking at the economic factors, what they need to do is just to set a timeline for those who are producing those materials to ensure that they face it out within a period of time and ensure they follow a strict implementation of that policy. Like say, okay, can you transition from sachet to a particular mayor that will not destroy the economy, that doesn't destroy the environment, and that equally not allow as easy access to such dangerous country or the world. You can't buy alcohol in any bar without your age above 18. But we are seeing 14 years, 13 years, and less of age having free access to the buy from the chaos on the streets. From access to it. So I think there should be a holistic approach to the government policy on to address the issue, the menace to the environment, the menace to our youngsters. It's very important that we have a clearer picture of what government can save the country from disaster coming.
Okay, so does this reversal actually suggest anything, or does this suggest the fact that the government acted prematurely in announcing this ban in the first place?
No, like I said, we need to get clarity. Or was it as a result of the pressure from the manufacturer? Sometimes this era we are playing politics in this country. Mm-hmm. There could be some major pressure on the government, some lobbies trying to influence government policy.
There have also been protests from people as well, the affected parties.
Following the policy. But the most important thing is that our government must have clarity on their policy. It's not enough for them to go back and forth, banning, reversing. So that it won't disrupt whatever the manufacturer is doing, and it could save face for NAFDAC, who have been entrusted. And let the world know exactly which direction the policy is going. And they have to examine the implication to the environment, like I said. And the other part of the country, for example, these are to safeguard the environment from destruction. Those elements are not decaying. What's the policy on alcohol consumption by the minors? And because you don't have any enforcement on that, it goes down to what drugs. When they take us on this thing, they become inhuman and they brutalize their victim. So these are things that will risk on securities and environment, and come up with clear position, so that we can know the direction we are going on this issue.
Okay, so this is the question that has been on almost everyone's lips. Everyone is saying, is it appropriate for the office of the SGF and NSA to overrule a regulatory agency like NAFDAC, especially when it comes to health-related, enforcement?
Yeah, it speaks to the absurdity in our system. Even in the directive, it's not supposed to be made public. For example, they have the DG of the NAFDAC who they can have direct relationship with and communicate to them, so that they can know what to do. It was NAFDAC that will probably now announce that, okay, we are economy today, the disorientation of the government, the structure of the government that can be easily influenced by political interest. So that's what happened. Ordinarily, in the same climb, we ought not to have without contact, without direct relationship, or without allowing the DG of NAFDAC to receive directive from them and make public announcement on the way forward. So it's abnormal. It's not new to us, but the government need to really correct that aspect.
Okay, so let's look at it, let's look at this. Do you think that whatever is the concern from the federal government, especially they are saying economic crisis, is more important than the health-related crisis NAFDAC is looking at?
No, that was it. You see, the policy is very shallow. It's just that you are saying you are preventing the coming destructions. What of others reason? That means that the policy were not well thought out. In our government, in initiating policy and ensuring that we have clarity. So I'm not sure. I don't want to say that the SGF is being, that we need to have a coordination in our policy enactment and the rest. If there's a coordination, that be free flow without any antagonism or public altercations that we are witnessing today. What we see is that, okay, God, on the agency responsible for this thing and have a discussion, have a clear picture so that the agency will, you can see American president, for example, issue policy or agencies that have been saddled, that have their responsibility, they know their responsibility. They can't see those happen in other climates. Except here, where lobbies, where corruptions dictate what we are seeing in government space. That's what we need to begin to examine. Presidency and those who are managing the agency, so that you won't be exposing the system to ridicule.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you very much for having me today, and have a lovely day.
You too. That was Mr. Oludare Mayo, our publisher, Global Financial Digest. Do well to follow us on all our social media platforms as seen on your screen for up-to-date stories. Check out our website. It's www.vanguardngr.com. My name is Ololade Adeomi. Until next time, bye for now.